The sun peeked over the Pride Lands, painting the savanna in warm, golden hues. Kion, the leader of the Lion Guard, stretched, his yawn echoing across the plains. "All right, team," he announced, shaking his mane. "Let's make sure everything's in order." Bunga, the honey badger, bounced with excitement. "You got it, Kion. Adventure time." Fully, the cheetah, smirked. "Try to keep up, Bunga." Besht, the hippopotamus, lumbered forward, his voice gentle. "We'll check the watering hole first. Make sure everyone's sharing nicely." Ono, the egret, circled overhead, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. "I'll keep watch from above. Let me know if you see anything unusual." With a nod, Kion led his team forward. The Lion Guard was a well-oiled machine, each member playing a vital role in maintaining the circle of life. They patrolled the borders, resolved disputes between animals, and protected the Pride Lands from any threats that dared to enter. Today, the air felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. As they approached the river, Kion couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. He glanced at his friends, their faces filled with determination and loyalty. He knew he could count on them, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Little did they know, their peaceful patrol was about to be disrupted by a shocking revelation that would test their bonds and challenge everything they thought they knew about their past. The quiet was broken only by the gentle sounds of the river and the chirping of birds, a stark contrast to the turmoil that was about to unfold. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows of the gorge, leaping into the path of the Lion Guard. It was a lioness, but unlike any they had seen before. Her fur was a dusty brown, her eyes held a fierce intensity, and a scar marked her left shoulder. She stood tall, radiating an aura of both vulnerability and strength. "Kion," she called out, her voice echoing through the air. "I've been searching for you for so long." Kion halted, his eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice guarded. The rest of the Lion Guard moved into defensive positions, ready to protect their leader. The lioness took a step forward, her gaze fixed on Kion. "Don't you recognize me? It's me, Zahara, your sister." The Lion Guard gasped. Kion's eyes widened in disbelief. A sister? He had never known he had a sister. Simba and Nala had never mentioned anything about it. "Sister," Kion repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "That's impossible." Zahara shook her head, her eyes pleading. "It's true, Kion. We were separated when we were just cubs. I've spent years trying to find you." She gestured to her scar. "I got this trying to find my way back to you." Bunga, ever the optimist, piped up, "Wow, Kion's sister. That's amazing." Fully remained skeptical, her eyes scanning Zahara carefully. "How do we know she's telling the truth?" Zahara turned to Fully, her expression earnest. "I understand your doubts, but I can prove it. I know things about Kion that only a sibling would know." Kion felt a whirlwind of emotions, shock, confusion, and a flicker of hope. Could it be true? Could this lioness, who appeared out of nowhere, really be his long-lost sister? He knew he had to find out, but something about her story felt off. Ono swooped down from the sky, landing beside Kion. "Kion, I've never seen her in the Pride Lands before, and I've seen her near the Outlands border recently, talking with hyenas." Kion's suspicion deepened. The Outlands were a dangerous place, home to Scar's followers and other unsavory characters. Why would his supposed sister be associating with them? "Zahara," Kion said, his voice firm, "Ono says he saw you near the Outlands, talking to hyenas. Is that true?" Zahara's eyes flickered with surprise, then quickly masked it with an innocent expression. "Oh, that? I was just lost. I asked them for directions." Fully scoffed. "Hyenas don't give directions, they cause trouble." Besht, ever the peacemaker, tried to mediate. "Maybe she really was lost, Kion. We shouldn't jump to conclusions." "But she's from the Outlands," Fully pointed out. "Lions from there are never good news. Remember Jasiri? She was the exception, not the rule." Kion knew Fully had a point. Trusting someone from the Outlands was risky, especially after everything they had been through with Scar and his followers. The memory of Scar's betrayal still lingered in his mind, a constant reminder of the dangers of misplaced trust. He looked at Zahara, trying to read her expression, but her eyes were unreadable. He was torn between his desire to believe her and his responsibility to protect the Pride Lands. He couldn't shake the feeling that Zahara's arrival was more than just a simple reunion. Something wasn't right, and he needed to find out what it was before it was too late. The safety of the Pride Lands and his family might depend on it. As Kion wrestled with his doubts, a wave of dizziness washed over him, triggering a fragmented memory. He saw flashes of green eyes, a small, playful paw batting at his mane, and a comforting purr. It was gone as quickly as it came, leaving him disoriented. Before he could fully process the fleeting image, the scene dissolved into a flashback. Simba paced anxiously in Pride Rock, his brow furrowed with worry. Nala sat beside him, her tail wrapped around his paws in a gesture of comfort, though her own eyes reflected deep sorrow. "We have to accept it, Simba," Nala said softly. "She's gone." Simba shook his head, his voice filled with anguish. But how could she just disappear? One moment she was playing near the watering hole, the next, nothing. The hyenas were more active then, Nala reminded him, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's possible." Simba cut her off with a frustrated roar. "No, I don't want to believe it." She was so small, so defenseless. "We searched for weeks," Nala continued, her voice heavy with grief. "Every inch of the Pride Lands, even the Outlands. There was no trace." Simba sighed, his shoulders slumping. "If only I had been watching more closely. If only I had been there to protect her." Nala nuzzled him gently. "Don't blame yourself, Simba. It wasn't your fault. We will always remember her." The flashback ended, leaving Kion even more confused than before. Had Simba and Nala kept this a secret from him? Was Zahara telling the truth? The possibility that he actually had a sister, one who had been lost so long ago, was both exciting and terrifying. He glanced at Zahara, who was watching him intently, her expression a mix of hope and anxiety. He knew he couldn't ignore the possibility, no matter how slim it seemed. He had to find out the truth, for his own sake and for the sake of the Pride Lands. "Kion, please," Zahara pleaded, breaking the silence. "I understand your hesitation, but I can explain everything. After I was separated from our family, I wandered for days, lost and alone. I was found by a kind older lioness named Zahara. She took me in and raised me as her own in the Outlands. She told me my parents abandoned me, that I wasn't wanted. It was a lie, of course, but I didn't know any better then. I believed her." Zahara paused, her voice cracking with emotion. "Zahara taught me how to survive in the harsh environment of the Outlands. She taught me to be strong, to be independent. But she also filled my head with hatred for Simba and the Pridelanders. She told me they were responsible for our separation, that they were cruel and selfish." She continued, "It wasn't until I overheard Zahara talking to Janja about a plan to overthrow Simba that I started to question everything. I realized that Zahara had been manipulating me all along, using me for her own selfish purposes. I knew then that I had to escape to find my real family and warn them about Zahara's plot." Zahara looked directly at Kion, her eyes filled with sincerity. "It hasn't been easy, Kion. I've had to fight my way out of the Outlands, evade Zahara's patrols, and search for any sign of you. But I never gave up hope. I knew that somewhere out there, I had a brother who needed me. And now here I am." Kion listened intently, his heart pounding in his chest. Zahara's story was filled with pain and hardship, but it also rang with a certain truthfulness. He still wasn't entirely convinced, but he couldn't deny the possibility that she was telling the truth. He needed more time, more information, before he could make a decision. He knew that the fate of the Pride Lands and his own family might depend on it. After Zahara finished speaking, an uncomfortable silence fell over the Lion Guard. Each member processed her story in their own way, their faces reflecting a mixture of emotions. "Wow," Bunga said, his voice subdued. "That's a lot to take in. I feel so bad for you, Zahara." He rushed forward and gave her a hug. "I believe you." Fully remained unconvinced. She paced back and forth, her tail twitching nervously. "I still don't trust her. Her story is convenient, too convenient." She just happens to show up, claiming to be Kion's sister and warning us about a plot? It sounds like a trap. Vesh nodded slowly. I could see both sides. Her story is sad, and she seems sincere. But Fully's right, we have to be careful. The Outlands are full of trickery. Oh no, as always, offered a detached observation. Zahara's vital signs are elevated, but within normal ranges for someone recounting a traumatic experience. However, there are micro-expressions that suggest she is withholding information. Kion looked at each of his friends, appreciating their honesty and loyalty. He knew they were only trying to protect him and the Pride Lands. He turned back to Zahara, his expression serious. Zahara, he said, I need time to think about all of this. I need to talk to my parents to find out if what you're saying is true. Until then, you'll have to stay here under our supervision. Zahara nodded, her eyes downcast. I understand, Kion. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust. Kion sighed. He knew this was only the beginning. The arrival of Zahara had stirred up old doubts and mistrust, and he had a feeling that the road ahead would be long and difficult. But he also knew that he couldn't back down. He had a responsibility to protect the Pride Lands, and he wouldn't let anything, not even the possibility of a long-lost sister, stand in his way. Kion led Zahara towards Pride Rock, the imposing structure looming in the distance. The journey was silent, filled with unspoken tension. Zahara walked with her head held high, but Kion noticed a subtle nervousness in her gait. He wondered what she was thinking, what she was planning. As they approached Pride Rock, the familiar scent of home filled Kion's nostrils. He saw Simba and Nala basking in the afternoon sun, their faces relaxed and content. He braced himself for their reaction to Zahara. Dad, Mom, Kion called out, his voice slightly hesitant. We need to talk. Simba and Nala turned, their expressions immediately shifting from calm to concern. They noticed Zahara standing beside Kion and exchanged a questioning glance. Who is this, Kion? Simba asked, his voice wary. Kion took a deep breath. This is Zahara. She claims to be my sister. Our sister. Simba and Nala's eyes widened in shock. They stared at Zahara, their faces a mixture of disbelief and confusion. Sister, Nala repeated, her voice barely audible. But that's impossible. She says she was separated from us when she was a cub. Kion explained that she was raised in the Outlands. Simba stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Zahara. Is this true? Are you really? Zahara met Simba's gaze, her expression earnest. Yes, Your Majesty. My name is Zahara, and I believe I am your long-lost daughter and Kion's sister. A long silence followed, broken only by the gentle breeze rustling through the savanna grass. The weight of Zahara's claim hung heavy in the air, casting a shadow of doubt and uncertainty over the Pride Lands. Kion could feel the tension building, and he knew that the next few moments would be crucial in determining the fate of his family and his kingdom. That night, Kion tossed and turned in his sleep. Images of Zahara, Zira, and Scar swirled in his mind, creating a confusing and unsettling dreamscape. He saw Zahara as a cub, playing happily with him, but then the scene would shift, and she would be replaced by Scar, his eyes burning with malice. He jolted awake, his heart pounding in his chest. The moon cast long shadows across his den, making the familiar surroundings seem strange and menacing. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being manipulated, that Zahara's arrival was part of a larger, more sinister plan. He remembered Scar's smooth words, his deceptive charm, and the way he had used others to achieve his own selfish goals. Scar had almost destroyed the Pride Lands, and Kion couldn't bear the thought of history repeating itself. He closed his eyes, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He knew he had to be strong, to remain vigilant, and to trust his instincts. But it was difficult, especially with the possibility that Zahara was actually his sister. The thought of having a sibling, someone who understood him, was appealing, but he couldn't let his emotions cloud his judgment. Suddenly, he saw a vision. Scar stood before him, a ghostly figure with a knowing smirk on his face. You can't trust anyone, Kion, Scar hissed, his voice echoing in the darkness. Especially not family. They'll betray you, just like they betrayed me. Kion gasped, his eyes snapping open. He was sweating profusely, his body trembling. Scar's words had struck a nerve, tapping into his deepest fears. He knew he couldn't let Scar's legacy influence his decisions, but the fear of being manipulated, of making the wrong choice, was overwhelming. He needed to find out the truth about Zahara, and he needed to do it quickly before it was too late. The fate of the Pride Lands and his own sanity depended on it. The next morning, Kion found Zahara near the watering hole, watching the sunrise. He approached her cautiously, unsure of what to say. "Good morning, Kion," Zahara said, turning to face him. Her eyes were bright, and her smile seemed genuine. "It's beautiful here, isn't it? I haven't seen a sunrise like this in years." Kion nodded, his gaze fixed on her. "It is," he agreed, his voice hesitant. Zahara chuckled softly. "You're still suspicious of me, aren't you?" Kion didn't answer. "I understand," Zahara said, her smile fading slightly. "I know it's hard to believe me, especially after everything I've told you. But I promise you, Kion, I'm not trying to hurt you or the Pride Lands." She walked closer to him, her eyes pleading. "I just want to get to know you, to be a part of your family." "Is that so wrong?" Kion hesitated, torn between his doubts and his desire to believe her. He looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of deceit, but he saw only sincerity and vulnerability. "Tell me about when we were cubs," he said suddenly. "Tell me something only my sister would know." Zahara smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Remember that time you tried to climb the great rock and got stuck? I had to climb up and push you down." Kion's eyes widened in surprise. He had almost forgotten about that incident. It was a memory he had shared with no one. "And remember your favorite toy?" Zahara continued. "It was a small, fluffy ball made of monkey hair. You carried it everywhere." Kion was stunned. How could she know these things? It was becoming increasingly difficult to deny the possibility that Zahara was telling the truth. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. Could it be possible that he had finally found his sister? He still had his reservations, but he couldn't deny the growing connection he felt with Zahara. He knew he had to proceed with caution, but he couldn't help but hope that she was who she claimed to be. Meanwhile, Fuli, driven by her unwavering skepticism, had ventured towards the Outlands. She knew that if Zahara was lying, the truth could be found there. She moved swiftly and silently, her cheetah instincts guiding her through the treacherous terrain. She reached the border and cautiously crossed into the Outlands, her senses on high alert. She knew that this was dangerous territory, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. She had to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Fuli began to question the animals she encountered, discreetly asking about a lioness who had recently left the Outlands. Most were wary and uncooperative, but eventually, she found a timid jackal who was willing to talk. "There was a lioness," the jackal whispered, his voice trembling. "She lived with Zira, but she was different. She didn't seem to share Zira's hatred." "Did she ever talk about leaving?" Fully pressed, her voice urgent. The jackal nodded. "She said she wanted to find her family, that she had been separated from them when she was a cub." "Did she ever mention anything about hyenas?" Fully asked, remembering Ono's report. The jackal hesitated, his eyes darting nervously. I saw her talking to Janja once or twice, but I don't know what they were talking about." Fuli's heart sank. This confirmed her worst fears. Zahara was connected to Janja, which meant she couldn't be trusted. But there was more. Did she ever mention a scar? The jackal looked confused. No escar. She was a strong fighter, but she never had a scar on her shoulder." Fuli's mind raced. Zahara had claimed to have gotten her scar while searching for her family. But if she never had a scar in the Outlands, then she had been lying. But why? Fuli knew she had to return to the Pride Lands and tell Kion what she had discovered. The truth about Zahara was far more dangerous than they had imagined. Back at Pride Rock, Kion was starting to let his guard down. Zahara had spent the day sharing stories and laughter, and he found himself enjoying her company. He even started to imagine what it would be like to have a sister, someone to confide in and share his burdens with. But deep down, a small voice of doubt still lingered. He couldn't completely ignore Fully's skepticism and Ono's observations. He knew that he had to be careful, that the fate of the Pride Lands might depend on it. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the savannah, Kion found himself wrestling with his emotions. He wanted to believe Zahara, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He needed more proof, more information, before he could fully trust her. He paced back and forth, his mind racing. He thought about his parents, about the loss they had suffered so long ago. He wondered if Zahara's arrival was a chance for them to finally heal, or if it was just another cruel twist of fate. He looked at Zahara, who was sitting quietly by the watering hole, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky. She seemed so peaceful, so innocent. But Kion knew that appearances could be deceiving. He had learned that lesson the hard way. With Scar, he sighed, his shoulders slumping with exhaustion. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, the burden of leadership threatening to crush him. He longed for a moment of peace, a moment of clarity. But he knew that there would be no rest until he had uncovered the truth about Zahara. The safety of the Pride Lands and his own heart depended on it. The internal battle within Kion grew stronger as he was being torn in two. Deep in the Outlands, hidden amongst the jagged rocks and barren landscape, Janja and his hyena clan were gathered around a flickering fire. The atmosphere was tense, filled with anticipation and a hint of unease. "Is she ready?" Janja asked, his voice raspy. A smaller hyena, Cheesy, shuffled forward nervously. "I think so, Janja. She's been practicing the plan. She knows what to do." "She better," Janja growled, his eyes narrowed. "Zahara is counting on us. If we fail, there will be consequences." Suddenly, Zahara emerged from the shadows, her eyes gleaming in the firelight. She looked different here, more confident, more menacing. The vulnerability she had shown Kion was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating demeanor. "Everything is in place," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Kion is starting to trust me. He's letting his guard down." "Good," Janja said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "Soon, the Pride Lands will be ours. Simba will be overthrown, and Zahara will finally have her revenge." Zahara nodded, her eyes fixed on the fire. "The Lion Guard will be no match for us. We will strike when they least expect it." "And what about Kion?" Janja asked, his eyes probing. "Are you sure you can do what needs to be done?" Zahara hesitated for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. But she quickly regained her composure. "I will do whatever it takes," she said, her voice firm. "For Zahara, for the Outlands, for revenge." Unbeknownst to them, Ono was watching from above, his keen eyes capturing every detail of their conversation. He knew he had to warn Kion immediately. Zahara was not who she claimed to be. She was a traitor, a pawn in Zahara's game, and she was about to unleash a deadly attack on the Pride Lands. The race against time had begun. Ono raced towards Pride Rock, his wings beating furiously against the wind. He spotted Kion near the watering hole, still talking to Zahara. He had to warn him, but he knew that approaching them directly would be risky. Zahara might try to stop him, or worse. He landed nearby, catching Kion's attention. "Kion, I need to talk to you. Alone." Kion looked at Ono, his brow furrowed with concern. He could sense the urgency in Ono's voice. "What is it, Ono? What's wrong?" "It's Zahara," Ono whispered, his eyes darting nervously towards the Lioness. "I saw her in the Outlands. She was meeting with Janja and his hyenas." Kion's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That's impossible." "It's true, Kion," Ono insisted. "I heard them talking. They're planning something. Something big. They're going to attack the Pride Lands." Kion's heart sank. He wanted to deny it, to dismiss it as a misunderstanding, but he knew that Ono wouldn't lie to him. He turned to Zahara, his expression hardening. "Is this true, Zahara?" he asked, his voice cold and accusatory. "Were you meeting with Janja?" Zahara's eyes widened in feigned surprise. "Kion, what are you talking about? Why would I meet with Janja?" You know I'm trying to protect the Pride Lands. Ono saw you, Kion said, his voice rising. He heard you talking about attacking the Pride Lands. Don't lie to me, Zahara. Tell me the truth. Zahara hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting nervously between Kion and Ono. Then, she let out a sigh, her shoulders slumping in defeat. All right, Kion, she said, her voice barely audible. You caught me. Kion felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and disappointment wash over him. He had wanted to believe her, to trust her, but she had been lying to him all along. Why, Zahara? Why did you do it? Tell me everything, Zahara, Kion said, his voice filled with controlled fury. Tell me about your plan. Tell me about Zira. Zahara looked down at the ground, shame filling her eyes. It's true, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. I was working with Janja. I was helping Zira. But why? Kion demanded, his voice laced with pain and confusion. Why would you do this? I thought we were family. Zahara looked up at Kion, tears streaming down her face. I didn't have a choice, she sobbed. Zira found me when I was just a cub, lost and alone. She took me in, raised me as her own. I owed her everything. But she lied to you? Kion argued, his voice trembling. She manipulated you. She filled your head with hatred for Simba and the Pride Lands. Don't you see that? I do now, Zahara said, wiping away her tears. But it's not that simple, Kion. Zira threatened me. She said if I didn't help her, she would hurt you, Simba, Nala, everyone I cared about. So you decided to betray us instead? Kion asked, his voice filled with disbelief. I didn't want to, Zahara pleaded, but I had to protect you. I thought if I could gain your trust, I could sabotage Zira's plan from the inside. I thought I could save everyone. And what about the scar? Kion pressed, remembering Fuli's findings. You said you got it while searching for your family. But that's a lie, isn't it? Zahara hesitated, her eyes darting nervously. It's complicated, she stammered. Zira gave me the scar as a test of loyalty. She wanted to see if I was willing to sacrifice everything for her cause. Kion stared at Zahara, his heart breaking. He had wanted so badly to believe her, to trust her, but she had been lying to him from the very beginning. He felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and disappointment wash over him. He couldn't believe he had been so naive, so foolish. He had let his guard down, and now the Pride Lands were in danger. Suddenly, a horn sounded in the distance, echoing across the Pride Lands. It was the signal for an attack. It's too late, Zahara said, her eyes widening with fear. They're here. Zira's attacking. Kion's heart pounded in his chest. He had been so focused on Zahara that he had let his guard down, and now the Pride Lands were under attack. He had to act fast. Oh no! Alert Simba and the rest of the Lion Guard, Kion ordered. Tell them to prepare for battle. Ono nodded and took to the sky, his wings beating furiously. Kion turned back to Zahara, his eyes filled with anger and distrust. This is your fault, he said, his voice cold and accusatory. You led them here. You betrayed us. No, Kion, please believe me, Zahara pleaded, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want this to happen. I tried to stop them, but it was too late. Zira wouldn't listen. Then help us now, Kion said, his voice hardening. Tell us everything you know about Zira's plan. Tell us how to stop her. Zahara hesitated, her eyes darting nervously. I can't, she stammered. Zira will kill me if I betray her. She'll kill all of us if you don't, Kion retorted, his voice rising. You have a choice to make, Zahara. Are you with us or against us? Before Zahara could answer, a wave of hyenas surged over the horizon, their eyes gleaming with malice, their teeth bared in snarls. They were led by Janja, who let out a triumphant laugh. The Pride Lands are ours, Janja shouted, his voice echoing across the savannah. Zira will rule again, Kion roared, his voice filled with fury and determination. Not if I have anything to say about it, he declared. Till the Pride Lands end, Lion Guard defend. He turned to face the oncoming hyena horde, his heart filled with resolve. He would not let Zira destroy his home. He would fight to protect his family, his friends, and his kingdom, even if it meant sacrificing everything. But just as Kion braced himself for battle, Zahara stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a newfound intensity. She let out a deafening roar, silencing the hyenas. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the savannah. "This isn't Zira's fight anymore. It's mine." Kion stared at Zahara in disbelief. What was she doing? Zahara turned to face Kion, her eyes filled with a chilling ambition. "You were right, Kion," she said, her voice cold and calculating. "Zira did manipulate me. She did use me, but she also gave me a taste of power. And now I want more." She turned back to the hyenas, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Janja, stand down. The Pride Lands will not be ruled by Zira. They will be ruled by me." Janja looked at Zahara in confusion, his hyenas murmuring nervously. "What are you talking about, Zahara? Zira is our leader." "Not anymore," Zahara declared, her voice filled with authority. "I am your leader now, and I command you to attack. Take Pride Rock, claim the Pride Lands, and bring me Simba's head." The hyenas, torn between their loyalty to Zira and their fear of Zahara, hesitated for a moment. But then, Janja let out a blood-curdling howl, and the hyenas surged forward, their eyes burning with a savage hunger. Kion roared and charged into the fray, his roar of the elders shaking the ground. Bunga, Besht, and Fully joined him, their courage and determination unwavering. The battle for the Pride Lands had begun, and the fate of the kingdom hung in the balance. Kion now knew that Zahara's deceit ran deeper than he had imagined. She sought to usurp the throne for herself. This betrayal cut deeper than any wound. The Lion Guard fought valiantly, their teamwork and courage shining through the chaos of the battle. Bunga dodged and weaved through the hyenas, his fearless attitude keeping them at bay. Besht used his size and strength to knock the hyenas off their feet, clearing a path for his teammates. Fully used her speed to outmaneuver the hyenas, striking quickly and efficiently. While the Lion Guard battled the hyena horde, Kion confronted Zahara, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. "Why, Zahara?" he demanded, his voice echoing above the sounds of the battle. "Why are you doing this? What do you hope to gain?" Zahara glared at Kion, her eyes burning with hatred. "You want to know why, Kion? It's simple. Simba destroyed my family. He stole everything from us." "What are you talking about?" Kion asked, his brow furrowed with confusion. "My parents," Zahara said, her voice filled with venom. "They were loyal subjects of Scar. They believed in his vision for the Pride Lands. But Simba, in his arrogance, banished them. He left them to die in the Outlands." Kion's eyes widened in shock. He had never heard this story before. "Zira took me in," Zahara continued, her voice rising. "She told me the truth about Simba, about what he had done to my parents. She taught me to hate him, to seek revenge. But that was Scar's doing, not Simba's." Kion argued, his voice trembling. "Simba was only trying to protect the Pride Lands from Scar's tyranny." "It doesn't matter," Zahara said, her eyes filled with rage. "Simba is responsible for my parents' deaths, and I will not rest until he is overthrown and I have claimed the Pride Lands as my own." She lunged at Kion, claws extended. "This ends now." Kion parried her attack, his mind racing. He couldn't believe that Zahara's quest for power was fueled by a desire for revenge against his father. He knew he had to stop her, but he also couldn't bring himself to hurt her. She was still his sister, or at least she had been. Zahara continued to attack Kion relentlessly, her movements fueled by rage and a thirst for revenge. Kion dodged and parried her blows, trying to reason with her, but his words fell on deaf ears. He knew that he had to stop her, but he couldn't bring himself to hurt her. "Zahara, please," he pleaded, his voice filled with desperation. "This doesn't have to end this way. You don't have to do this." Zahara ignored him, her attacks growing more ferocious. She was determined to overthrow Simba, no matter the cost. Seeing that he had no other choice, Kion took a deep breath and prepared to use the roar of the elders. He focused his energy, channeling the power of the past great kings of the Pride Lands. He could feel the roar building within him, a force of immense power. But as he opened his mouth to unleash the roar, he hesitated. He looked at Zahara, her eyes filled with hatred and pain. He couldn't bring himself to use the roar against her. She was still his sister, a part of him, even if she had chosen a dark path. He lowered his head, his shoulders slumping with defeat. He didn't know what to do. He was torn between his loyalty to the Pride Lands and his love for his sister. He couldn't bring himself to hurt her, but he also couldn't let her destroy his home. Suddenly, Zahara lunged at Kion, her claws extended, ready to deliver the final blow. Kion closed his eyes, bracing himself for the impact, but never came. He opened his eyes and saw Simba standing between him and Zahara, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. Simba had arrived, and he was ready to defend his son and his kingdom. The tables had turned. Now, it was Zahara facing her target of vengeance. "Zahara," Simba said, his voice filled with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. "Why are you doing this? You don't have to live like this. Stay out of this, Simba," Zahara snarled, her eyes fixed on him with hatred. "This is between you and me." "It doesn't have to be," Simba said, his voice calm and steady. "I know what happened to your parents. I know that Zahara filled your head with lies. But you don't have to let her control you anymore. It's too late for that," Zahara said, her voice filled with despair. "I've gone too far. There's no turning back." Just then, Nala arrived, her eyes blazing with fury. She charged into the fray, her claws extended, ready to defend her family and her kingdom. "Zahara, stop this madness," Nala shouted, her voice echoing across the savannah. "You're destroying everything we hold dear." "You don't understand," Zahara said, her voice trembling. "You never will." Simba and Nala fought side by side, their strength and courage inspiring the Lion Guard. They pushed back the hyena horde, their determination unwavering. Seeing his parents fighting with such bravery and resolve, Kion felt a surge of renewed determination. He knew that he couldn't let Zahara destroy the Pride Lands. He had to find a way to stop her, even if it meant hurting her. He took a deep breath and focused his energy, channeling the power of the roar of the elders once more. This time, he would not hesitate. He knew what he had to do. The fate of the Pride Lands depended on it. He would use the roar, but he would aim it carefully, not to destroy Zahara, but to disarm her and end the battle. The time for hesitation was over. He had to protect his home, his family, and the circle of life. With a mighty roar, Kion unleashed the roar of the elders, carefully directing the powerful force towards Zahara. The ground trembled as the roar struck Zahara, sending her flying backwards. However, Kion had aimed it in such a way that it wouldn't cause her serious harm. It was enough to disarm her, to stop her from continuing her attack. The hyenas, seeing their leader defeated, scattered and fled into the Outlands, their tails between their legs. The battle was over. The Pride Lands were safe. For now, Kion rushed to Zahara's side, his eyes filled with concern. "Zahara, are you all right?" he asked, his voice trembling. Zahara looked up at Kion, her eyes filled with hatred and defeat. "You haven't seen the last of me, Kion," she snarled, her voice weak but filled with venom. "I will have my revenge. I will claim the Pride Lands, even if it's the last thing I do." With that, she turned and fled into the Outlands, disappearing into the shadows. Kion watched her go, his heart filled with sadness and regret. He had tried to reason with her, to save her, but he had failed. She had chosen a path of darkness, and there was nothing he could do to stop her. Simba and Nala approached Kion, their eyes filled with concern. "Are you all right, son?" Simba asked, his voice gentle. Kion nodded, his eyes fixed on the Outlands. "I'm fine, Dad," he said, his voice barely audible. "But I have a feeling this isn't over. Zahara will be back. And next time, she'll be even more dangerous." He knew that the Pride Lands were not safe yet. The threat of Zahara loomed large, and he had to be ready to face her again. The fight was far from over. The score was not settled. In the days that followed, the Pride Lands slowly returned to normal. The scars of the battle remained, But the circle of life continued, resilient and strong. Kion spent much of his time reflecting on the events that had transpired. He had learned a valuable lesson about trust, about family, and about the importance of listening to his instincts. He had been so eager to believe that Zahara was his sister that he had ignored the warning signs, the red flags that had been waving right in front of his face. He also learned that family wasn't always defined by blood. The Lion Guard, his friends, were his family too. They had stood by him, even when he had doubted himself, even when he had made mistakes. Their loyalty and courage had inspired him, and he knew that he could always count on them, no matter what challenges lay ahead. One evening, as the sun began to set, Kion gathered the Lion Guard at Pride Rock. He looked at each of his friends, his heart filled with gratitude and respect. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "Thank you for always being there for me, for always protecting the Pride Lands. I know I made a mistake, trusting Zahara, but you never gave up on me. You never gave up on the Pride Lands." Bunga grinned. "That's what friends are for," Kion fully nodded. "We're a team, Kion. We'll always have your back." Besh smiled. "We're stronger together, Kion. Always have been, always will be." Ono nodded in agreement, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. Kion smiled, his heart filled with warmth. "We may not know what the future holds," he said, his voice filled with determination. "But one thing is certain. We will always be there to protect the Pride Lands. Till the Pride Lands end, Lion Guard defend." The Lion Guard roared in unison, their voices echoing across the savannah. They were stronger than ever before, their bond forged in the fires of battle. They were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. The Pride Lands were in safe hands, and the circle of life would continue to thrive, thanks to the courage, loyalty, and unwavering commitment of the Lion Guard. The lesson about trust and family would never be forgotten.